Good morning, students. Our today's topic in the subject of business studies is effective communication, one way or two way. So concentrate yourself. We are going to start. A lot of ideas and concepts are going to be involved in this lecture. So concentrate yourself. We are going to start now. First, we are going to read the definition of the communication. Communication is the transfer of a message from a sender to a receiver who understand the message. And now we are going to read the definition of the message. Message is the information or the instructions passed by the sender to the receiver. And next we are going to read the definition of the effective communication. The information being sent is received, understood, and acted upon in the way intended. If this thing happen, this will be called effective communication. The next thing that we are going to read is the features, elements of effective communication. So sender transmitter. So this is the first element of the effective communication. There should be a sender, which is also called transmitter. The person who has a message that has to be passed on to others. The message may contain information, instructions, an attitude, or an emotion. The next thing that is required in the effective communication is the medium, plural media. The method used to send a message, for example, through a letter, that is called written communication, a telephone call, that is called verbal communication, a poster, that is called visual communication, etc. Because in a poster, you see something. In a telephone call, you hear something. And in a letter, to read something. The next thing that is required in the effective communication is the receiver. The person or people to whom the message is sent and who should receive and understand it. This does not always happen. You will learn about the barriers that might appear. The next thing that is required in the effective communication is the feedback. It is the response of the receiver to the message from the sender. This shows whether the message has been correctly received, been understood, and if necessary, acted upon. So these are four things which are needed in the effective communication: a sender, medium, receiver, and feedback. If all these things acted upon according to the requirement, then that communication will be called effective communication. An example is here. A bank announces the launch of a new internet service for the young employees. It does this through a TV spot that shows a phone number for inquiries. In this case, the message is the bank has launched a new internet service for young employees. So this is the message. The sender is the bank itself, the marketing or PR department. The medium of the communication is the visual and verbal, that is television, because on television, our ad will be like telecast, in which some words will be there, that is called verbal, and some pictures will also be there, that is called visual. So the medium of the communication is the television, that is visual and verbal. And the receiver in this example should be all the young employees targeted by the bank with a new service fitted for their needs. And finally, the feedback is represented by the phone calls for details about the new service. So this is an example. I hope so. This will make your concepts more clear. The communication is effective if, after the TV spot and phone calls, people targeted by the bank become its customers. So if the target is achieved, then this communication will be called effective communication. Okay, the next thing that we are going to read in the topic is one-way communication. One-way communication involves a message that does not imply a response, a message back from the receiver to the sender. So this is called one-way communication, in which only sender sends the message and no feedback is required. The receiver does not contribute to the communication, cannot provide any feedback. He/she is only expected to act upon the message. The risk of the misunderstanding or lack of the action because not enough information is transmitted is high. So, risk of the misunderstanding because no feedback is coming is there, or lack of the action. And sometimes the receiver understand the message because no feedback is required, so lack of the action. So sometimes workers does not act upon it. So these are the risks in one-way communication. Examples are the weather reports on the television, the sweater's tag with washing instructions, the nutritional label on the cereal box, the morning newspapers, the recorded music on the CD, the billboard message, Dr. Sam's lecture if he only lectures and does not open up a discussion with the students. So these are the examples. You can see these are one-way communication example in which message is sent but feedback is not required. So the receiver only receive the message, either he understand it or act upon it or not. So the message is sent but feedback is not coming. One-way communication, it is fast, it saves time and money. So this is the advantage of one-way communication. The sender is satisfied because there is no way of questioning his information and thus probably protects his oversights and mistakes. This is the disadvantage of the one-way communication. This type of the communication is good for giving simple directions. So if the situation is simple, in which only messages are required to be sent, so this type of the communication is best in these scenarios, in these situations. However, it is very dissatisfying to the receiver who has no opportunity to seed any classification of the message. So this is very dissatisfying for the receiver because he only receives the message and cannot contribute anything with the sender. The receiver is left with a sense of disharmony. So this is another disadvantage of the one-way communication. Okay, now we are going to read the two-way communication. Is the process of sending a message from a source to a receiver and feedback is given. Feedback can be a simple confirmation of receipt, that message has been received. This may be a feedback, and action or some action is required, or a discussion may also be required. So these may be the feedbacks about the message. Two-way communication has certain advantages compared to the one-way communication. It makes clear to the sender whether or not the receiver has clearly understood the message, because feedback is required. So maybe discussion is required or some action may be required. So it makes clear to the sender whether or not the receiver has clearly understood the message. It allows the receiver to raise questions, objections, comments for a better understanding and consequent action, because sometimes the receiver cannot fully understand the message. So he may raise questions, he may raise objections, he may raise comments for a better understanding. Communication is not effective unless the message is clearly understood by the receiver. The receiver feels part of the process, can make a contribution, and may motivate him to take actions. he will be more motivated when he will consider himself the part of the process, because he will discuss the things with the sender. This type of the communication is good for problem solving. So when where a problem solving is required, for example, a mathematics lecture, so two-way communication is very important. For example, the subjects which are difficult one. So when our teacher delivers the lecture, two-way communication is very important, so that the questions may be raised by the students, their objections, their contribution is required, so that it is clear to the sender that the receivers have understand the lecture. So this kind of the communication is good for problem solving. Among the disadvantages of the two-way communication, the most important are: it may be time consuming. The sender or the receiver may not have enough time to engage in a discussion about the message. Second disadvantage is it may be more expensive than the one-way communication, because maybe some medium may be required, or may time is important. So this may be expensive. So these are two disadvantages of the two-way communication. It is very important for a business to carefully analyze the advantages and the disadvantages implied by the one-way or two-way communications, and to make the best decision accordingly. So a business has to decide in which areas of the business one-way communication is necessary, and in which areas of the business two-way communication is necessary. So here is an example that shows why two-way communication is necessary. So look now, a small producer in Poland may find it cheaper and more rapid to send a list of the products by email to its representatives in the USA. So one-way communication is much cheaper. So he sent the list by email. This would be a one-way communication. The company would maybe avoid the cost of an international conference call, because international conference call cost is not only the cost of the call, but also the persons who are in the conference call from the abroad will have to spend their time, working will be stopped, and maybe some extra spending may also be there. So this is a costly process. If there is no further contact, the company would not know if the list was properly received, if the products answered to the US client's request, and it would not receive precious information from the representatives. So if the one-way communication in this case is done, so the company will not know either the list has been received and acted upon properly. So a two-way communication is more than necessary. After the message, a phone call may be at a time properly set and agreed with the representative, even expensive. This would ensure that all details are transmitted, received, understood, and proper action is taken. So that's why the two-way communication in certain areas is very necessary. So this was the lecture, students. I hope so this will be much more easier for you to understand. So learn this lecture, understand it, and make your notes. Thank you so much.